Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I am here today to give you my standard review of the new Fuji X-S10 camera. This, of course, is an APS-C camera, and it is one that kind of fits in between some of the existing models of Fuji, and in many ways, as we'll detail as a part of this review, I think it is one of perhaps the most appealing combinations of features to price if you're looking for a compact camera that is still packed with a lot of performance. And so if you want even more detailed information, breakdown of the sensor, all of those things, I recommend that you take a look at the definitive review instead. But today I am filming on the X-S10 along with the XF 50mm f2 lens. So you can get a little bit of an idea of video performance here as we film today. So taking a look at the camera itself, this is a compact camera, and I think that is one of the great advantages of it. It weighs in at only 415 grams without a battery and memory card, or 465 grams if you put in the battery and memory card. Its dimensions are 126 by 85 by a little over 64 millimeters. And so it is truly compact, but yet it still has a very nice grip on it. And I think that is certainly an advantage compared to, say, some comparative Sony models, to where we've got a little bit more robust a grip. And so even though the camera is really small, it doesn't feel that bad in the hand. And so I give them good marks for that. Actually, we've got a magnesium alloy body rather than the typical polycarbonate or plastic, if you want to put it another way. And so we've got a little bit more of a robust body. However, the limitation here that sets it apart from the higher end models is that there is no internal weather sealing. And so as a byproduct of that, if you're concerned about that and you're wanting to use the camera in a variety of maybe more difficult environmental conditions, you may want to look at a different model instead. And I think that Fuji's logic is, well, it's about heat dissipation for the 4K video. I suspect, since they've managed to do that with other cameras just fine, that it's probably more about market separation. But what we do have is a really nice camera with a somewhat simplified control scheme relative to some of other Fuji cameras. Now, if you like what Fuji does with kind of its retro aesthetic, you may be a little bit less likely to love the control scheme here, because it's a lot more traditional. We've got a traditional mode dial instead of the separate dials for ISO and then also for like shutter speed. And so, it's just a little bit more straightforward when it comes to that. Standard front and rear wheels, that you can use to control either, shutter speed, aperture, exposure bias, whatever you want to do with those. And then you do fortunately have a small joystick, which is handy, and I find myself using a fair bit to move a focus point around, and of course to navigate menus. And then you do have the fully articulating screen that is a touchscreen. However, again, the touchscreen is limited to certain applications. So it does work for the Q menu. You can select a focus point. You can even touch to shutter. You can't navigate the main menus with it, however. And so there are some limitations there to what touch does and what it doesn't do. So I kind of slot it in between Canon and Sony. Canon with a full compatibility with their touchscreens, and then Sony with very limited touchscreen compatibility, and Fuji sits somewhere there in the middle of the two. But you do have nice controls here. My only criticisms is this time of year, because it's cold, there's two buttons that, both the shutter button that is fairly flush and requires you to kind of shape your finger to depress it with any kind of accuracy. And I found that hard to do with gloves on. And so what I tend to do is to not get shutter at first, and then when I get it, I tend to push too hard. And so then I get more frames of what I want. And so there's no kind of happy medium for me there. The other button is the record button, which I do find a little bit hard to depress, again, for the same kinds of reasons with gloves on, just because it's a fairly flush button. Outside of that, the only other criticism that I will offer up is that, and it's a fairly typical one, but what they've had to do to accommodate, space-wise, is that they have moved, there's a single card slot. It's just a typical SD card slot, and it's located in the battery compartment on the bottom. So I find in that kind of configuration, it's always a little bit tough because of, if you have any kind of quick release plate, you're working off of a tripod, often that will interfere with that door opening. And so it's just a bit of limiting when it comes to that. Outside of that, though, the big kind of headline inclusion here is the fact that it does have in-body image stabilization, which really, I think, differentiates it from, say, the X-T30, which, has similar sensor and autofocus performance, but it lacks two kind of big things: the fully articulating screen and then also in-body image stabilization. There's about $100 difference between the X-T30 and then this X-S10, and it makes me prefer the X-S10 because in-body image stabilization. So a very effective system. How big? They've had to miniaturize it about 30-35% to make it work in the smaller body, but they seem to have done a good job. The X-T4 system is rated at 6.5 stops. The H1, I believe, is rated at 5.5. This is right in between those at 6 stops of rating. And so that's certainly a very useful rating. It's fairly mannerly, and I think it works a little bit better than what, say, you get on a comparative Sony body. And so fairly high praise. Obviously, the nice thing about in-body image stabilization is that it works with all your lenses, which is certainly huge because there's a limited number of Fuji lenses that do have OS built into them. And so to be able to get that with all of your lenses is great, of course. The other thing, of course, that really is useful is if you're hand-holding video, particularly if you're doing static shots. IBIS is still not great for movement, but for hand-holding video, you can get some really great results for that. And on the subject of video, fairly good video specs here. Obviously, I'm filming in 4K at the moment. You are limited at 30 frames per second for 4K. However, you do have both Ultra HD and DCI crop options there. You actually have a 2K crop option in DCI, which I don't see all that often. And that does allow you to go up to 60 frames per second, which, might be useful. Now in full HD, you actually have the option of going all the way up to 240 frames per second, which can enable you to get some serious slow motion footage, as you can see here. On top of that, you also have F-Log, and so you have the ability to capture log footage and, thus have more editing capability as a part of that. So a fairly fully featured set of video options here that is basically limited only by not offering 4K 60, which would be the thing that would set it apart. But I suspect that they've used some market differentiation. For example, the X-T4 will give you the 4K 60. So obviously this as a lower tier model, they're creating some market separation in that way. The one area you may have noticed that I think Fuji is still lagging behind is when it comes to video AF tracking, which is still not quite up to what Canon and Sony are doing. And so you might have noticed some hunting along the way. And that's the unfortunate downside. Autofocus system here is fairly competent. It's the same autofocus system that we find in the X-T4, and so it has the 425 contrast AF points. It has phase detect points. I think it's selectable somewhere in the 173-ish range, but you have points all across the frame, and so plenty of coverage. It does fairly good for tracking action, as you can see here, but although the tracking works fairly well, one thing I don't enjoy as much is that unlike, say, on my Sony or Canon bodies, you don't see as much interaction of the actual tracking of the subject. And so, for example, in those sequences with my dog, I couldn't actually see that it was tracking her in the way that, that as I'm actually capturing it, even though obviously it was, as you can see from the end results. The limiting principle here, as I've always found it to be with Fuji cameras, is that you have a limited number of frames you can capture before you fill the buffer. And so, first of all, you have two options for the shutter. You can get up to 8 frames per second with the mechanical shutter that you can see here. And with that mechanical shutter, you get 23 raw images or 105 JPEGs. And so, that's roughly 3 seconds when you're shooting RAWs, for example. But then if you go to the electronic shutter, while you get a much faster potential for burst, you get up to 20 frames per second in, the full sensor readout. And then you can go into what they call a sports mode, which is a little bit tighter crop, and get up to 30 frames per second there. The problem is that at the 20 frames, even at the 20 frames per second, you're only getting up to 17 raw images or 32 JPEGs. And so that's less than a second's worth of capture for RAWs, and then in JPEGs you're only getting a couple of seconds. And so you can actually see at the end of this sequence that even though that's in JPEGs, there's a gap in the last couple of frames. You can see it's just not quite as smooth, and that's because it already started to slow down with the buffer even over that very brief sequence. And so obviously that's going to limit you, in an unfortunate kind of way. One thing that I do like is that you can set it up to where it automatically shifts between the the mechanical and then the electronic shutter. So for example, I was just testing the 50mm f1, and what that enabled me to do is that in many cases, you would exceed that 1/4000th of a second. But then we'll then switch over into the electronic shutter automatically that allowed me to get up to 1/32,000th of a second, which was of course plenty. And so that's certainly a nice addition there. I find that IAF works fairly well with this focus system, but maybe not quite as effective as what I see on Canon or Sony at this point. Similarly, this camera shares the X-T4's 26 megapixel X-Trans sensor. That gives you a resolution of 6,240 by 4,160 pixels. And in my test of the sensor, and if you want more information, check out the definitive review, I found that, for example, with dynamic range, that it does fairly well, particularly with shadow recovery, a little bit maybe more noise in recovering shadows than what I see with the better Canon and Sony. On the top end, it's not quite as good as the most recent Canon and Sony sensors, and I would say it's a stop and a half behind in terms of highlight recovery. But you do have a nice option, and that is that if you'll bump up from the base ISO, which is 160, up to 320, you can enable something called DR200, which actually samples the highlight information from base ISO rather than the current ISO setting, and that enables you to get an extra stop of dynamic range through a little bit of electronic trickery. You can also go on up to ISO 640 and you can do DR400, which does the same thing, except for, again, you get up to 2 stops there of additional highlight information. So that certainly can be useful if you're in a situation where you really need a lot of dynamic range. I personally use it, and I do find it useful overall. What I found when looking at the ISO performance is that your native ISO is a little bit more restricted. It's ISO 160 through 12,800. And so obviously that's it doesn't take you up as much on the high end or the low end as some competing cameras. What I found is that over that ISO range, though, your performance is pretty good. You're going to start to see some visible noise, certainly in the shadows at 6,400 and 12,800. But I think that throughout most of the range, it's fairly useful, but don't expect it to be as good as, say, equivalent full-frame sensors these days, which are going to give you a better ISO performance, at 12,800. Some of the most recent, for example, I just recently reviewed the Canon R5 and R6, and at 12,800, they're still really clean by comparison. That is a little bit of a limitation sometimes with APS-C, however. It's a smaller sensor, a lot of pixels packed on there, and so, some of that is to be expected. You've got a very high pixel density here. So I find the sensor performance good, but not necessarily top tier. What Fuji's probably greatest strength that they bring to the table is they have very good color science, and what a lot of people really appreciate is if they happen to be JPEG shooters. Fuji's JPEG engines are very, very good, and so they give you a lot of flexibility on tweaking them in camera to kind of get the look you want in a JPEG file. And beyond that, I find that their correction profiles, it's a fairly closed system, so a lot of first-party lenses, their correction profiles tend to be very, very good and help you to really get the best out of your lenses. And so JPEGs look really, really good. I'm kind of biased towards being a raw shooter, but even I appreciate the JPEGs that come out of these Fuji cameras. And so that, I think, is, one of their great strengths. So at the end of the day, I actually personally find this to be one of the most compelling Fuji cameras to this point. I feel like it has a great combination of performance and features at a competitive price. And the features that it's lacking, I don't think are deal breakers. And so it seems to have most of the stuff that you would want, without maybe a few of the extras you get on the X-T4, but it's got a lot of the, important features, including in-body image stabilization and that articulating screen. which are pretty huge in my estimation. So for $1,000 I think you're getting a camera that really compares quite favorably to a lot of the competition. I'm Dustin Abbott. If you'll look in the description down below, you can find linkage to my full text review, also to that image gallery that I referenced. Also find linkage to follow me on social media, to become a patron, to sign up for my newsletter that comes out every Thursday. And if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and let the light in.